Now this video is going to be about how we can generate a city facade texture just deriving it from a simple photograph such as this one. Now I've been looking online for several images and I found this image to be rather useful because it has quite a parallel view of several city facades in Rio itself. Now this is the actual beach that is right next to our site, so it'll mean that the city facades are quite relevant and quite accurate according to what the actual circumstances is like. So just to show you what the final texture looks like, we'll just click over to this one, and that is the one that I've been working on and finished just now. Now you will notice that it is simply a compilation of the buildings all just duplicated above in each other. I do admit that this is a really rushed type of fast forward version of doing things, but the whole point of this exercise is how to create an entire city in, let's say, 20 minutes. Textures and all. So the idea is that we have one texture, one group of splines that we extrude up with greeble, and everything just happens pretty much instantly. So we don't really want to waste any time on the things that don't really matter to our clients. They really want to see the project, and they don't want us to spend hours and hours of valuable time modeling each individual building with individual facades. Of course we could do that, but it's just not our intention to do that. So what we want to do in Photoshop to get that final JPEG for the facades is we'll create a new file. We can go about 2000 pixels, perhaps 500 pixels high. It doesn't have to be too large. Remember that this is optimized for middle to lower end computers that need smaller textures. So we're just going to have one texture for the entire city. And obviously if your computer is more powerful, then you can just ramp that up and add many more layers to your textures. Now what we want to do here is we start on the one side and we want to go and select each of the facades that we think we can use. Now I'm going to use only the ones that are in the front line. I'm not going to use any skewed perspective views, and I'm just going to take the square selection tool and I'm going to select the facade. The ones that I do like, perhaps just that part there. And then I'm going to press Ctrl C, then immediately Ctrl V, and that's going to create that small extra layer for me. Then I go back to my original background and I can pan across, and I can do the next one. Perhaps this tall building here. And the same thing, Ctrl C and Ctrl V. And back to the background, and I'll just repeat this process until I've captured enough variety in all the different facades until I'm happy. If for instance here you want to capture this entire building but there's something in front of it, then you could go and use your healing brush and just brush out that part. It's okay if we have that little extra detail there, I mean, no real problem. And then we Ctrl C and Ctrl V that as well. Then we move on to the next one. And basically we're going to continue this process until we feel happy. Ctrl C, Ctrl V. Just going to do one or two more for the workflow exercise, and then I'm sure that in your versions you will be doing many more complex facades. The last one, I'll take this big one here. Maybe I'll just cut it from there. Right, so now that we have those facades, we can hide the original background and we can start to manipulate these images. So that will be the base for our facade texture. Now each of those we can then add to our new texture model, a new texture space. We can hide these others, we don't need them. And we can start working on the repetition of them. So we'll just take this one, perhaps from the top down works better. We'll just repeat that a few times. If you're not happy with that tree being there, you can go and Photoshop each individual column, but it's really up to you as to how much time and detail you want to spend on this. There are also a couple of good textures online that you can find The main point is that what I'm doing is I'm combining many of them. Now, one thing you do want to make sure of is two things. Is first of all, you can press Control R to open up your rulers, and you can just double check that all of your textures are in fact vertical. And you can just go through with your guide to check that you're happy with that. If you are, then the next thing to check is the vertical height. Now, you want to make sure that since you're using one texture for all of the buildings, you need your floor-to-floor height to be the same. So if you found a photograph that has pretty much the same scale of facades across the entire board, then you're okay. But in our case, I mean, I think it just requires a check, that's all. So you will go to each facade, or at least one principal facade, and then you will go to each floor and add a guide. And then you will just use that as a reference to scale up your other images. And then by pressing Control and Alt, we can just slide up and create our duplicates. Same thing here, Control Alt and create a duplicate. And then we just continue with that process. If I hide my guides, then we'll see the result that we get. Now, once you're finished, let's just say for argument's sake that this is now our entire texture. Then what you can do is you can merge everything down, flatten your image, and you can brighten or darken depending on what your image needs. And you can start to manipulate that as a single texture. If you like, you can go and add reflection maps by selecting all your windows. You can do that with Magic Wand or manually. You can do the same thing where you can create a bump map. In our case, I'm just going to leave it absolutely plain and simple. I'm not going to add any reflection to the windows. I'm just going to leave it as such so that it renders very quickly and just gives us the pure conceptual idea of a cityscape. Now again, we're going to have a look at this texture since it's the one that was created earlier, and it's the one that we will be applying to our model in 3ds Max in the next video. So just to sum up, in this video we have looked at how we've gone from a simple photograph such as this one down here of Brazil, and how to extract the facades out of it so that we can then compile it into a texture such as this.